Welcome back to Lab Lesson 4B on creating assembly drawings in Inventor. In our first few lab videos, we covered solid modeling in Inventor and subsequently how to create engineering drawings of solid models. In our last video, we learned about assembly modeling in Inventor, so it only makes sense for this video to cover creating assembly drawings. In lecture video 4B, we learned about different types of assembly drawings: outline, exploded, and section assemblies and their conventions. The process of making an outline drawing of an assembly is essentially the exact same process as making an engineering drawing of a part, which we've already covered in lab video 2B. In this lab video, we will walk through the process of creating an exploded assembly drawing in Inventor, which is a little different. The steps that we will follow to make an exploded view assembly drawing are as follows. First, we will open up a presentation file, a new file type that allows us to animate components in our assembly to make an exploded view. We will move the components using the Tweak Component tool, which is step number 2. And then once we have all components positioned as we'd like, step 3 is to take a snapshot view of our assembly that we can then create a drawing of. This will bring us back to the drawing file interface, where we can add a parts list, balloons, and dimensions, if applicable, to our drawing. So let's walk through each of these steps to create the door hinge exploded view from our last lab lesson. I will start off by opening a standard inches presentation file, which is found at the very bottom of the Create New File window. And you'll see when we open this file and select the assembly we want this presentation to be based off of, that the presentation file now has a new presentation tab in our toolbar at the top, and we have a new browser that shows different scenes in our presentation, and we have this storyboard panel at the bottom. Our door hinge assembly is in the presentation file in its fully constrained state, and our next task is to use this Tweak Components tool to explode our assembly. So what we are going to do is select the component that we want to move, and then click the Tweak Component button. Now you'll see we can select a move direction and specify a distance for our component or components to move. There are also options to specify a rotation instead of translation, and we can even specify the duration of this movement because we are essentially creating an animation of our assembly. Here I have selected the base hinge to move down 3 inches, and I will just leave the duration as is. And when I press the check mark to finish tweaking our component, we can see that the movement now shows up in our storyboard at the bottom, where the hinge starts in its original location and then moves down 3 inches that we specified. Next, I'll tweak the hinge pin to move out 5 inches using the same process, and this shows up in our storyboard as well. So now we have an exploded view that we want to make a drawing of. To do so, I'm going to go to the storyboard and move the frame marker to the last frame, where I will right-click and select New Snapshot View. Now this view shows up in the Snapshot View window to the right, where I will rename it to Exploded. I'll also take a snapshot of the original unexploded view and rename that to Fully Assembled. Now we are ready to create a drawing. So we will right-click on our exploded view and select Create Drawing View. We will select the drawing template that we would like to use, and then we will place our view much like we did before with engineering drawings. So we have placed our base exploded view, and I might want to add a fully assembled view in the top right. So I will place another base view to do so, where I will now click the drop down for View in the Place window and change our view to the fully assembled view for placement. I'll make the view and scale label visible, and then just edit this text so that we only see the scale. Next, we can add a parts list to our drawing using the Parts List button at the top. To add a parts list, we just have to select the view we want the parts list for, and then we can press OK, and then we can left-click to place our parts list on the drawing. This parts list has 4 default columns for item number, quantity, part number, and description, but we might not want all of these columns. To edit our parts list, we can right-click our parts list and select Edit Parts List, which will bring up a window for us to apply edits. Here we can edit the contents of our parts list, and we can also add or remove columns by right-clicking on a column and selecting Column Chooser, Here we will remove the description column and leave it at that. Now we need to add balloons to go with our parts list, and we will use the balloon tool to do so. Adding balloons is a lot like adding dimensions. You just click on the component you want to add a balloon to, and then you move your cursor out and click where you want the balloon to be placed, and then you right-click and press continue. In this example, we only have one of each part, but in some cases we might have multiple instances of a part in an assembly. With part repeats, we'd only put a balloon on one of these instances to indicate the part number, but we would also want our balloons to not only indicate the item number, but also the quantity as well. To update our balloon styles to show both the item number and quantity, we can right-click on a balloon and select Edit Balloon Style, which will bring up the Style Manager where we can change the balloon formatting shape to circular 2 entries. After saving our style update, our balloons now have the item and quantity in them. So now our drawing looks almost complete. One more update that we might want to make is changing the line styles of the explosion trail lines, which are currently solid lines. If we right-click on these lines and select Properties, we can change the line style to Chain, which is like the centerline line style format, and that will hopefully do a better job at conveying the path of motion of the components from their fully assembled state to their current state in our exploded view. If the lines disappear, you might just have to reopen the Edit View window and change the view style to something else and then back again for the lines to reappear. This finishes off our exploded view drawing, but there are some other drawing adjustments that you might want to make in other applications. One of these might be changing the title block size and/or the text that appears in the title block, which you can do by right-clicking on the title block in the drawing browser and selecting Edit Definition. This title block is just like a sketch, where you can dimension the title block size, just like dimensioning the geometry of a 2D sketch in part modeling. You can also add or edit text, and in the Format text box, you'll see that we have an option to include specific text parameters. For example, here we have the title text linked to the drawing title, but we could change this to be the model part number if we wanted that to appear in our title block automatically. Some other adjustments that you might want to make include changing the precision of dimensions, if you have dimensions in your drawing. This can be done for individual dimensions using the Edit Dimension box that we used previously to add text like TYP for typical to our dimensions. But now we can go to the Precision and Tolerance tab instead and change the precision using this drop-down to either increase or decrease the number of decimals in our dimension. This wraps up this video on assembly drawings, where we have learned how to make a presentation file and tweak components to make an exploded view. We then used that exploded view to make the drawing that we see to the right of this slide, complete with a parts list and balloons. Stay tuned for the next lab video where we will explore one last tool in Inventor, dynamic simulation.